There are places in America that look too polished to hide anything at all. White columns, manicured lawns, chandeliers, quiet hallways designed for leisure, not alarm. The Greenbrier in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia was one of those places. A luxury resort known for presidents, diplomats, golf, and old-world comfort. On the surface, it represented a familiar kind of American confidence, refined, orderly, insulated from danger. But for decades, buried beneath that calm exterior, there was another America waiting in secret. Behind the walls of a celebrated resort, hidden under a wing presented as ordinary expansion, engineers and federal planners created a vast underground bunker intended for one extraordinary purpose: to receive the entire United States Congress in the event of nuclear war. Not part of rumor, not the invention of later conspiracy, a real facility designed during the Cold War, maintained in secrecy, and prepared for a moment everyone hoped would never come. What makes the story endure is not only the bunker itself, but the contrast it reveals. Above ground, luxury, ritual, hospitality. Below ground, continuity plans, fallout calculations, and the quiet assumption that American government might one day have to disappear in order to survive. And to understand how such a place came to exist beneath a resort, we have to begin with the country that built it. To understand why a secret bunker for Congress ended up beneath a luxury resort, it helps to return to the atmosphere of the United States in the late 1950s. This was the high Cold War, an era shaped by nuclear anxiety, civil defense plans, and the growing belief that a direct attack on Washington was no longer unthinkable. American officials were not preparing only for military conflict abroad. They were also asking a quieter question at home. If the federal government were suddenly cut off or destroyed, how would it continue to function? Out of that question came a broader strategy known as continuity of government, the effort to preserve national leadership after a catastrophic attack. Facilities such as Mount Weather and other relocation sites were part of that world, and the Greenbrier became one of its most unusual expressions. The Greenbrier itself stood in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, long known as one of America's grand resorts. Presidents had visited, wealthy families vacationed there. Its setting in the Allegheny Mountains conveyed privacy, elegance, and distance from the capital without seeming remote in any alarming way. That combination mattered. In 1958, Congress instructed the resort to construct what became the West Virginia Wing, which served as cover for a concealed fallout shelter and relocation facility for Congress. Construction began in 1959, and the bunker opened in 1961. On paper, it was an extraordinary undertaking hidden inside an ordinary expansion project. Guests saw a prestigious hotel growing with the times. But beneath that appearance, planners were creating a secure, underground environment intended to receive senators and representatives if nuclear war ever forced the American government off the surface. And that contrast between public normalcy and private preparation is where the story truly begins to deepen. Once the decision had been made, the challenge was not simply to build a bunker. It was to build one without allowing the country to fully notice what it was. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, the facility was constructed beneath what appeared to be a normal addition to the Greenbrier. Officially, the new structure was presented as the West Virginia Wing, an expansion that fit naturally within the resort's scale and reputation. In practice, it concealed a hardened underground relocation center designed for the House of Representatives and the Senate. The shelter included dormitory areas, decontamination showers, medical and support spaces, a power plant, water reserves, communication systems, and large assembly rooms intended to allow Congress to continue functioning after a nuclear attack. Two especially notable chambers were built for that purpose, one for the House and one for the Senate. What made the arrangement so distinctly American was its reliance on routine and disguise rather than spectacle. The bunker was not presented to the public as a fortress. It lived behind ordinary hospitality. Guests arrived for golf, dining, and seasonal travel. Staff maintained rooms, served meals, and managed the visible life of the resort. Meanwhile, behind blast doors and carefully hidden infrastructure, another system waited in silence. To preserve secrecy, the government and its partners relied on a cover story and a controlled presence on site. The company Forsyth Associates maintained the facility under the appearance of providing television repair services for the hotel. In reality, a small team of men kept the bunker ready for activation, tested equipment, monitored supplies, and maintained the hidden mechanics of a place built for a national emergency. That is part of what makes the story so compelling. The bunker was not hidden in a desert or buried beneath an obvious military site. It existed within a living American institution, maintained for decades in the space between ordinary leisure and unimaginable crisis. And over time, that uneasy balance became harder to ignore. As the Cold War deepened, the bunker beneath the Greenbrier became more than a construction project. It became a standing assumption about the future. The logic behind it was stark. If Washington were destroyed or rendered unusable in a nuclear attack, Congress would still need a place to gather, communicate, and attempt to preserve constitutional government. That meant the facility could not exist merely as an empty shell. It had to remain operational. Supplies were maintained, air filtration and power systems were kept ready, beds, uniforms, medical resources, communication equipment, and food stocks were preserved with the expectation that on very short notice, hundreds of lawmakers and staff might be rushed into the Allegheny Mountains and sealed underground. Official accounts of the site describe blast doors, decontamination areas, diesel generators, water storage, and meeting chambers intended to support legislative continuity under catastrophic conditions. What intensified the story was the contrast between readiness and invisibility. Above ground, the Greenbrier continued its public life as one of America's best-known resorts. Guests checked in, events were held, hallways remained elegant and quiet. The place suggested stability, not emergency. But below that surface, planners were preparing for the possibility that the United States might lose its capital in a single strike. That tension was not abstract. By the early 1960s, the Cuban Missile Crisis had shown how close the superpowers could come to confrontation, and continuity planning gained renewed seriousness across the federal system. The bunker's purpose no longer belonged only to theory. It existed within a country learning to live with the possibility of sudden annihilation. And yet, the deeper the preparation became, the more fragile the secrecy also became. Because a place can remain hidden for years, but not forever. For decades, the bunker remained one of the strangest hidden spaces in American public life precisely because it was not activated. No convoy of lawmakers ever arrived at the Greenbrier under nuclear emergency. No emergency session of Congress was ever held beneath the resort. The facility's central drama was not that it was used, but that it waited, year after year, for a catastrophe that never came. And in that waiting, secrecy became part of the structure itself. That secrecy finally broke in 1992, when investigative reporter Ted Gupp revealed the existence and purpose of the bunker in the Washington Post. The article made public what had been preserved in silence for more than 30 years. Beneath one of the country's most elegant resorts was a relocation center built to shelter the legislative branch after nuclear attack. The disclosure did not expose a rumor. It exposed an operating piece of Cold War continuity planning that had remained in place long after the most intense years of the early nuclear age. The Greenbrier itself now states that Gupp's article led to the bunker's declassification. That moment changed the meaning of the facility. Until then, it had existed as a hidden instrument of emergency government. After the exposure, it became something else. A historical artifact, a visible reminder of the assumptions America had once built into concrete, steel, filtration systems, and locked doors. In one sense, the story's decisive turn was quiet. There was no explosion, no armed raid, no dramatic confrontation. Just a secret becoming public, and with that revelation, the end of the bunker's original life. But once the country could see what had been hidden there, the deeper implications became harder to ignore. Once the bunker was exposed, its significance extended far beyond the Greenbrier itself. For the resort, the revelation permanently altered how people understood the property. What had long been known as a symbol of American elegance and leisure was suddenly also recognized as a concealed node in the machinery of Cold War survival. The hotel did not lose its public identity, but that identity now carried a second meaning. Beneath its dining rooms, guest corridors, and formal architecture had been a place designed for political continuity under nuclear threat. In time, the bunker shifted from secret facility to interpretive site, and the Greenbrier eventually opened it for guided tours as part of the resort's public history. For historians and the wider public, the disclosure offered a rare look into how seriously the United States had planned for worst-case scenarios during the Cold War. Continuity of government had often been discussed in abstract terms, but the Greenbrier gave those ideas physical form. It showed that civil defense and emergency planning were not only bureaucratic theories or military briefings, they were architectural realities built into American space and maintained in secret over decades. Ted Gupp's reporting helped bring that hidden infrastructure into public view, turning the bunker into one of the clearest symbols of how nuclear anxiety shaped national planning. Culturally, the story endured because it joined two versions of America that often seem far apart: comfort and fear, ceremony and contingency, public calm and private preparation. The bunker mattered not because it was ever used, but because it existed at all. And over time, that may have become its most lasting lesson. The Greenbrier bunker endures in American memory because it reveals something more complicated than secrecy alone. It shows a country trying to preserve normal life while quietly preparing for the possibility that normal life could end in an instant. Above ground stood one of the most elegant resorts in the United States, a place associated with rest, ceremony, and continuity of tradition. Below ground was a second architecture of continuity, not social, but constitutional. It existed to protect the machinery of representative government if the visible nation were suddenly broken. That contrast feels distinctly American. So much of the country's history is built on confidence, openness, and movement. But beneath that surface, there has often been another layer, one shaped by contingency, engineering, and the fear of what might happen if the system were tested beyond imagination. The Greenbrier was not merely a bunker. It was a quiet admission that even powerful nations prepare for moments they hope never arrive. And maybe that is why the story still resonates. Not because the bunker was used, but because it waited. Silent, maintained, hidden beneath luxury, it reflected an America both secure and uneasy at the same time. If you value real American stories told with care, subscribe to Unseen America. There is always more beneath the surface than we remember.